Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Becoming the most valuable sports franchise in the world doesn't happen without risk. A man who's willing to bet it all, and the players ready to make their own luck. America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, is the story of the 1990s Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones's impact on NFL history. Featuring interviews with iconic 90s players and more. Watch America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, streaming now only on Netflix.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com, home of the Purdy Memorial Golf Tournament. At the Susquehanna Valley Country Club, auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Great help. Made a big difference. That's what Purdy Insurance does. They make a big difference for you because customer service means everything to them. They want to make sure you're fully insured, but also save you money. It is all at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. And maybe a day late, but never a dollar short. Ladies and gentlemen, Neal Coolong, sir, welcome.
As always, it is my pleasure to be here. Different day, but same vibes.
All right, let's talk about the cut-down vibe. Anything the Steelers do that in any way was even mildly surprising?
Not really. If you look at it at a 10,000-foot level as opposed to sitting in the weeds, which is to say I understand the people that are covering it day to day, reporting it. It may look like this or that or the other thing, but honestly, you comb through the names with everybody being practice squad eligible. None of it was a surprise, and the way that this all works now, it's all still fluid. This is going on. There could be a trade, there could be a signing, another cut, other roster moves being made. They're not going to be done with this really, probably until Monday. The reason that's important is because as of, I think it's Monday, maybe Tuesday, the start of week one means every player that's on the active 53-man roster has their salary guaranteed for the year.
That's right.
So they make moves based on that game, but there's also a financial component to it. Who do you want to insure to be on your team and have to pay them if nobody else signs them? That adds to the formula as well. A guy like Robert Woods, I can understand why they cut him initially. I can also understand why he's now on the practice squad. Would not be at all surprised if he's called up in week one, maybe permanently in week two. For that reason, we don't want to have to guarantee him his money throughout the year. We'll pay him game to game when we need him and kind of see how things work. The point is they're not necessarily done overall. I think that they have vested interest in several players they did cut, just not in that immediate role. A guy like Beanie Bishop is a good example. I mean, they loaded up at the position that he played,
Right.
And you might have noticed he didn't play as much in the second half of the year as he did in the first.
Right.
Moves to, not specifically to replace him, but to upgrade the position, upgrade the depth there, was something they've been showing since March. So the fact he isn't there and he's on the practice squad, I think there's value to him in some degree. Obviously, in case of an injury, you want to have a guy that's got experience within your defense, somebody that you know personally, medically. All those things are factors in those decisions. That's important, and I think that's kind of what they're leading into now. So this gets to be less and less of a series of surprise moves and more stuff that it almost seems more like administrative workarounds, I guess is a good way of putting it. If they want a guy, they can keep a guy. It's really what it comes down to. The question that we get into post-deadline and start of week one is where do they want to spend their money, how do they want to guarantee it, and how are they going to build that around what they need for their week one game. And that's kind of the point that we're in right now. I don't know if they'll make any other moves. There's been rumors that they're still looking. I think all teams are looking to see what else they might be able to do, and I don't think we're done yet. I think there are other moves that will be made across the league. Maybe the Steelers will be one of them. It's a question of how can they solidify the rest of their roster for what they're going to need moving forward.
I feel like it's more important than ever just to make sure you get somewhere in the 53 because of a 17-game season. There's a good chance you'll be on the big team at some point during the course of the year because of the attrition rate.
Yeah, that's the way it's been, too. Post-COVID, you might remember, it wasn't even all that long ago, the practice squad was 10 players, and it took a lot to get them on the active roster. The rule, since COVID, during COVID, the rules expanded the practice squad quite a bit. And I've always kind of wondered where the union would sit on this versus the league. Really what they're doing is creating a situation in which teams can get 3 games of well below minimum salary out of players. And since they expanded it to include veterans, veterans weren't allowed to be on it before.
That's right.
Over a certain accrual of time in the league. Now they all can. And you look at, certain practice squads. I noticed that Kendrick Green is on the Bills practice squad. That's a good laugh for Steelers fans. But right. Kendrick Green's been in the league for a long time. He's a starter in the league. He's in the practice squad. That's really just kind of a secondary roster, a holder, a placeholder for a player that has played plenty in the NFL and will otherwise be making a lot of money, but the team can save quite a bit while retaining the rights of a player that theoretically they can call up for the first 3 weeks of the season without paying him that regular game check and then cut him. So I've wondered where that's going to go, and I kind of thought it would be more contraction than anything, but it's expanded. So with the practice squad moves, you see a lot more guys that you recognize than you used to, and it does expand kind of the overall pool in the league. But you wonder how far it's going to go before they would finally just say, why don't we just add two spots to the roster? And I would think the union would want that above anything else, but it seems more reasonable for teams to do that, just to make it a little bit more sensical for fans, make it a little bit easier to plan exactly what you want to do, and try to eliminate the ambiguity week to week of who you have available.
Yeah. Okay, so there aren't many sports organizations that do a brilliant job of outlining a third-string quarterback like ESPN does. But Kenny Pickett was dealt to the Raiders, and Shedeur Sanders made the squad. Now, I would like to point out Dylan Gabriel also made the squad. He's the second-team quarterback. Didn't make the headlines. How absurd are we getting with sports coverage when, that becomes a headline as to who the third-string quarterback is?
I think when you draft 2 quarterbacks and you sign 2 others, you're creating it.
Yes,
and on top of that, not that I necessarily believed this, but the Browns said all off season they'd be comfortable carrying 4 on their roster.
Right.
I guess if your plan is kind of what the Browns are doing, they want to throw as many darts at the board as they can because they want to figure out next year's backup for when they go draft a quarterback. Every move that they've made, in my opinion, it leads them to that conclusion. They got a lot of draft picks next year. They got 2 first-round draft picks next year. It's a good quarterback draft, assuming most of them who are eligible enter the draft. They're going to draft a quarterback in the first round. What they have now kind of, it bolsters the infrastructure for that move next year. I think that's what they're doing. Now, you get Andrew Berry to admit that publicly ahead of time, you will have pulled off a miracle. Yeah. But all of their, I'm somebody that believes in seeing what happens as opposed to what they're saying and taking that more into account. I don't think it's even a bad move. It's just not the greatest way to inspire your fan base. Sometimes it needs to happen, like when you have a quarterback who's robbing you blind every single season and you need to get rid of him. You're going to have to eat a good amount of cap space just to have him not on your team next year. These are the moves you'd make to prepare for that. They load up with picks. Hopefully, for their sake, they don't want to trade up to use those assets, because they need a lot of guys that are young and cheap to play to get around that cap hit that they're going to take to rid themselves of Deshaun Watson. And they're going to need a starting quarterback. They'll probably need a backup quarterback as well. And I think what it came down to is they made the trade at the top of the draft, pick up a good defensive tackle along with a first-round pick for next year. Check, you got that. That's good. That's a solid move. The second-round pick, I didn't even remember who that was, the linebacker who's doing really well, the Schlesinger kid.
For
solid
UCLA.
move. You're in the third now. I don't know what others would have graded Dylan Gabriel as, but I will admit I was not a Gabriel fan in college. He looked pretty good in the preseason. I think he did some good things. Does it justify taking him in the third round? I'm not sure, but I think what the Browns said was, we need a quarterback to get experience now because we're going to have a rookie starting for us next year. Take the one that you have the highest, and for them it was Gabriel, not Sanders. But then Sanders, who I think it's fair to say, by all accounts, nobody expected him to be available in the fourth round, let alone the fifth. And when he's there in the fifth, it's a value pick to them.
Yep.
We may as well take another one, because let's look at the guys that we have. Joe Flacco's 41 years old, or however old he is. Kenny Pickett has bounced around from team to team. We're not sure what he's going to be when he gets here. Let's have 4 just in case something happens. And what happens in training camp? Pickett misses most of it with a soft tissue injury. We can't really count on him any more than we can get value for him for trading him. That's the scenario that they kind of bought into by drafting a quarterback in the fifth round. They can get that pick back, have a cheaper quarterback who's younger, a little more room to grow, I think, Sanders versus Pickett, and you have a 3-deep quarterback room that's really kind of the same as you thought you'd get going into the season, and all of those guys you can develop and build for next year when you're going to have a different guy running your team. So the news that Cleveland created does justify all of it. Now, I think the real question you're asking is about the insanity that surrounds Shedeur Sanders. It started earlier than this, but if you look back at, and speaking his name causes him to appear, I know, but you look back at the whole Tim Tebow fiasco in Denver as well as New England and with the Jets, the fervor that's being generated by backup quarterbacks creates something completely different. Now, on the flip side of it, you have the Colin Kaepernick situation. Yeah, that same kind of of heat that comes with that. The national media attention that's going to be coming every single day to your backup quarterback is not a good thing for a locker room. Many would say. Some would say it's not a big deal at all. I would challenge that those people aren't in locker rooms very often.
No,
it's a distraction. It's a pain to everybody. It creates resentment. It's a problem. Shedeur, I felt, performed what a rookie quarterback oftentimes looks like in the preseason. Knowing the flaws that he had, which are there, we saw good things, good traits that he has, which are there. Putting all of that together, the decision is not that difficult for the Browns to make, in my opinion, except you've got all this atmosphere, which now follows you into the regular season. So you may have removed a quarterback, you may have set up your future, but now you've got the problem with, why didn't he get a chance to be the backup quarterback? Well, he did. He didn't win the job.
That's right.
And also he needed to do a lot more than he did if he was going to unseat the guy at his position that they drafted 2 rounds earlier. So all these things can be explained very simply, but that's not typically how routine NFL fans handle things. So the Browns have that distraction on their hands, at least, however long they'll keep Sanders. You don't know. Again, going off what I was saying earlier, still a lot of moves are going to be made across the NFL. He doesn't know yet. Until you're on that roster for week one, your salary's not guaranteed. You're not locked into anything. So we'll see what happens with all of that. But I think the Browns have to operate more long-term than what the average team will have to do. And I think the Sanders move kind of plays into that. And keeping him on the roster, I think, is a reasonable decision. I could have seen that they cut him and kept Pickett, but I think they got value for Pickett, and Sanders can handle being the emergency quarterback until they have a better option, or he becomes the backup or even the starter at some point. You never know what could happen.
Well, yeah, but you've got a 41-year-old starting quarterback in Joe Flacco. I think the door is open there. Jordan Addison's out the initial part of the season. Thielen's going to go from Carolina back to Minnesota. Give me the value of that pickup, because I've always felt like Thielen was a pro's pro at wideout.
Yeah, he definitely is, and I followed this one pretty closely. I spoke to some sources that had knowledge of everything that went down. It was a deal that both teams were comfortable with, but it became kind of a matter of, pre-dominoes, if you will. One's got to fall before everything else is going to go, and it's centered around Thielen being comfortable restructuring his contract in such a way after he gets traded that is going to be beneficial to him, which means he, really needs to do it with the Panthers before he's going to do it, before he's going to get traded. That was his desire. The Vikings, as you might recall, only drafted like 4 times, I think, in this past draft. They have future money coming due that they're going to have to spend, and they want to be able to bolster that with more younger talent. And they like where they're at in terms of the amount of picks. They didn't want to give up too many. They didn't want to have a net loss of picks, so they're trying to put conditions into picks that make it so if we end up swapping picks, that's fine, but we don't want to lose any. And Carolina, their issue was, if we're trading Thielen, a guy that we value legitimately within this offense, even if we have drafted receivers in back-to-back years that are going to be our primary guys this year, he has value to us. We don't want to pay his salary. We're not trying to get rid of him. So it became kind of a three-way negotiation between all three sides, with all three sides feeling a deal is probably best. Thielen, obviously from Minnesota, Detroit Lakes, in the northern part of the state, went to Minnesota State Mankato. Minnesota legend. I was just walking around at the Minnesota State Fair recently. There's still Adam Thielen jerseys everywhere you can see. They love the guy. So and he's a solid veteran player, like you alluded to. In Jordan Addison's suspension, as well as Naylor's injury, they needed somebody that knew what he was doing in the offense, could play a couple different roles, not just one set specifically. Thielen fits all of that very well, and he knows the offense. He knows what's expected of him. You have to have that, and what's essentially a rookie-plus quarterback, you have to have that familiarity of a guy that's going to come in to fill a very specific role. So the deal made sense. It was just a question of, how do we make everybody whole in this? So you knew it was going to take some time, and both sides were kind of like, well, let's see what happens with waivers. You never know. Maybe there's an option that's just going to fit somebody better. Carolina didn't want to trade him necessarily, but would have taken something back if they didn't have to pay his $6.25 million salary. So it seems to me everybody got kind of what they wanted out of this. Thielen will have maybe a little bit bigger of a role in Minnesota, at least for 3 games until Addison comes back. Maybe call it 4 until Addison's really in the groove again, maybe longer, who knows. Keep in mind, Addison's a guy that was under the influence and fell asleep in the line at LAX. That's how he got suspended in the first place. So can you count on him? I don't know. But, Thielen you've always been able to count on. So it's at worst a good insurance policy for what very well could be the best team in the NFL. And the Vikings are at that level. The Panthers are rebuilding, and you had to like what you saw at T-Mac all preseason. He looks really good. Leggett, the kid that they drafted last year, looks to be a big playmaker. Bryce Young looks a lot more comfortable in an open backfield, which is what they gave him the second half of the year, and he flourished in that. So Panthers are a team that's on the rise. Thielen makes a bunch of money. He's not going to be a high target guy for them. It made sense for everybody. And the Vikings got what they needed. Maybe had to overpay a little bit, but that's the NFL. It's not a fair market. It's not an even market. Guys have assigned values, and that's really where Thielen was. But he's the right fit for what they need, and it's a team that can or should not think that they can afford to start the season 0-3 because their offense can't be dynamic without a good veteran receiver running bang eights, running deep, shallow digs, things that they need on third down. He's that kind of guy. They don't really have that necessarily beyond Jefferson. So it makes a lot of sense. I think the Vikings got better. I think it's the right move for the Panthers as well, and a detailed transaction that works out pretty well for both sides, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's the kind of move a contender makes. The Vikings are a contender. Neal, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
The outstanding Neal Coolong joining us on the show today. And this half hour being brought to you by Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, light, business, boat, motorcycle, RV, Medicare. They'll help you get the best deal possible where you're fully insured and also save money because customer service means everything to them at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Nothing, nada, zilch. That's what you'll pay this summer to drive a brand new Kia from Sunbury Motors Kia.
Wanna see ya in a Kia.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love, starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
New season, new chaos in college football.
Let's go! Big stage, big opportunity.
This Labor Day weekend, the wildness lives on ABC, ESPN, and the all-new ESPN app.
What a way to start!
Featuring top 10 teams like Clemson, Notre Dame, Alabama, and LSU, and Bill Belichick's debut at North Carolina.
It's so special when these teams collide.
Don't miss a lineup filled with electric matchups.
Welcome back to college football.
Kickoff week presented by Modelo. Labor Day weekend on ESPN and ABC. Also available to stream on the all-new ESPN app.
That's right. Get 0% APR financing for 48 months on 2025 Kia Sportages, Kia's most popular model. Plus, get 0.9% APR financing for 48 months on 2025 all-wheel drive Kia Sportage hybrids. They get up to 38 mpg. SMC also has 1.9% APR financing for 48 months on the all-wheel drive, brand new, refresh-styled 2026 Kia Sportage LX, starting at just over $32,000. Remember, every new Kia comes with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. Nothing, nada, zilch. With as low as 0% APR financing at Sunbury Motors Kia on the Strip at Hummel's Wharf and at sunburymotorskia.com.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.